Have you noticed a pattern in New Zealand politics lately? A small but loud campaign suddenly dominates the headlines. Politicians jump on it, media outrage explodes, and then somehow government policy changes almost overnight. Meanwhile, massive public opposition to other laws or issues gets ignored completely. That's not random. That's what people call astroturf politics. You see, astroturfing is when political campaigns are made to look like spontaneous grassroots public movements. You get it, right? Grass being the real thing, turf being fake grass. Therefore, grassroots equals real movement, and astroturf equals fake movement. And turf is expensive, right? So in turn, astroturf campaigns are heavily funded, highly organized, professionally amplified, and politically useful. These campaigns can obviously work for politicians or political parties pushing an agenda or a narrative, or this can work for corporations wanting to apply pressure to a politician or a government. That does not mean ordinary supporters are fake. I mean, a lot that we do see on social media are probably bots, but a lot of the supporters are also real people with real concerns. The issue is, however, how those real concerns are then strategically shaped, amplified, and then weaponized for political gain. And then once you start recognizing these patterns, you start seeing it everywhere. They're everywhere, they're everywhere, they're everywhere. Let's take Three Waters, for example. New Zealand has a massive water infrastructure problem. Pipes failing, wastewater leaking, councils unable to afford upgrades. And sure, the original Three Waters reform was controversial, but the public debate quickly stopped being about infrastructure and costs and instead became, they're stealing your assets, unelected control, co-governance takeover, and just straight up racism. Groups like the Taxpayers Union pushed massive campaigns against it, petitions, roadshows, constant media messaging, and politicians from the likes of the ACT Party and the National Party amplified the exact same framing. Then after the election, the reforms were scrapped. But here's the important part they don't talk about. The infrastructure costs didn't disappear. They just shifted back onto councils and ratepayers. So while the political campaign succeeded, the public still pays the bill.
Damn it, again?
Now let's look at what's happening with media regulation. The Broadcasting Standards Authority, the BSA, made a move towards regulating online broadcasters, specifically the platform. And boy did Winston Peters react poorly, attacking the decision publicly, calling the BSA authoritarian and fascist.
Bordering on fascist behaviour. Frankly, they should go. They should be abolished.
Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? Then suddenly we get campaigns against the BSA, petitions, outrage, and now the government plans to abolish it entirely. That should concern people regardless of political side, because once regulators disappear, accountability weakens for everyone, not just alternative media, all media. And what type of bill will we be fitting for the deregulation of media, do you think? Because this is where online outrage becomes dangerous. The Benjamin Doyle situation showed us how quickly political narratives can spiral online. Claims and misinformation was spread rapidly across political media ecosystems about Benjamin Doyle. That commentary became outrage, that outrage became harassment, and eventually that pressure became so extreme that Doyle stepped away from politics to protect their family. Now look, criticism of politicians is part of our democracy, but Doyle's only crime is that they are trans, which we all know the alt-right doesn't like.
We're going to declare a war on woke. And long live common sense.
So when these outrage ecosystems are then rewarded politically, escalation becomes the business model and outrage becomes the currency. The louder and more emotionally charged the narrative becomes, the more clicks, the more engagement, the more attention, and the more political leverage it creates. And this is exactly why I believe we're going to see more of this type of thing during the election campaign, especially if the BSA is abolished with haste. Because culture war politics works. It dominates the headlines, it keeps people angry, it simplifies complicated issues into emotional tribal battles, and most importantly, it distracts from structural issues like housing, infrastructure, wages, healthcare, the cost of living, corporate influence, and the ever-increasing wealth concentration. Because let's face it, if the public is permanently fighting culture wars online, they're not paying attention to who benefits economically.
Let's be clear, I'm wealthy, I'm, sorted.
And depending on how quickly they shut the BSA down, depends on how bad this is actually going to get for us. And before people scream, free speech matters, absolutely. But free speech is not absolute. And let's be real here, democracies also need accountability. I mean, we have already seen during COVID how misinformation ecosystems can shape public behavior at a massive scale. And sure, not every regulator gets things right. However, by that same token, not every criticism of media is censorship. Like, come on, Sean Plunkett's mouth is foul and loose and needed reining in. But for the government's response to be to remove oversight entirely creates a different type of danger. It creates a political environment where outrage, misinformation, and algorithm-driven narratives spread faster than facts ever can. Then once trust in institutions collapses completely, democracy itself becomes unstable. So this is bigger than left versus right. It truly is about understanding how modern political influence and manipulation works, how outrage gets manufactured, how narratives get amplified, and how emotionally charged political campaigns can reshape legislation and public opinion incredibly quickly with very little care about the people it affects in the process. So during this upcoming election season, ask yourself, who benefits from all the outrage? Who funded this campaign? Who amplified the narrative? And what conversations aren't we having while everyone is distracted? Because that's usually where the real story is.
Make no bones about it. I know why I'm on this show. Because you pick what's going to happen to you. Because you pick what's going to happen to you.